Dear Sinopale friends, you are all welcome. I will continue on Turkish. Değerli Sinopale dostları, hepiniz hoş geldiniz. Upcycling, ileri dönüşüm teması altında hayata geçirdiğimiz Sinopale 8'in davetli kuratörü Rana Öztürk'le bu haftaki programımızı gerçekleştiriyoruz. Sevgili Rana, hoş geldin. Ve
Hoş
konuk sanatçı dostumuz Julie Upmeyer. Sen de hoş geldin Julie. Welcome. Uzun yıllardır birçok etkinliğimizde, birçok farklı projemizde Rana ile işbirliği içinde kalarak Sinopale'nin uzun soluklu ilişkiler geliştirme ereğinde gerçekleştirmiş olduk. Upcycling yani ileri dönüşüm temasına ait kavramsal çerçeve bağlamında kuratör Rana Öztürk'ün hayata geçirdiği Sinopale'nin İlişkiler Atlası adlı proje, Sinopale'yi ilişkisel bir karşılaşmalar sahası olarak ele alarak Bienal'in daha önceki edisyonlarında Sinop'ta üretilen ve sergilenen sanat eserleri aracılığıyla Sinop ile başka yerler arasında daha önce var olmayan veya görünmeyen ne tür bağlantıların ortaya çıktığını keşfetmeyi amaçlıyor. Öztürk, farklı yerleri ve zamanları birbirlerinden ayrı düşünmenin artık neredeyse hiç mümkün olmadığı küreselleşmiş bir dünya düzeninde belirli bir yere konumlanmak üzere tasarlanmış bir bienal, katılan sanatçılar, sanat eserleri ve izleyiciler için o belirli yerde ve zamanda bulunmanın ne anlama geldiği sorusunu gündeme getirir. Sinop'ta en başından beri şehrin yerel bağlamı ve gündelik yaşamıyla çok güçlü ilişki kuracak şekilde kurgulanmıştır. Böylelikle şehri ziyaret eden sanatçılar, kuratörler ve Sinop sakinleri arasında sayısız ilişki ve etkileşim başlatmıştır. Bu etkileşimler Bienal kapsamında üretilen ve sergilerde sunulan sanat eserleri aracılığıyla somut biçimler almıştır diyor kendi konsept yazısında. Değerli konuklar, Rana Öztürk kendi etkinlik alanına Anne Metzen, Johannes Vogel, Julia Upmeyer, Raluca Popa, Rika Taurianyan, Ronan Makrea Satellite grubu davet ederek oldukça farklı zamanlarda ve kavramlar altında Sinopale deneyimi yaşayan sanatçı ve sanat inisiyatiflerini bir araya getiriyor. Rana Öztürk kuratör, akademisyen ve sanat eleştirmeni olarak faaliyetlerini sürdürüyor. Doktora çalışmasını Dublin'deki National College of Art and Design'da küresel modernite anlatıları, ilişkisel coğrafyaların haritalandırıldığı yerler olarak uluslararası çağdaş sanat sergileri başlıklı teziyle tamamlamıştır. Akademik çalışmalarının yanı sıra kuratör, koordinatör, editör ve çevirmen olarak da çeşitli kurumlarda çalışan Öztürk, 2015'ten beri Yeditepe Üniversitesi, Bilgi Üniversitesi ve Boğaziçi Üniversitesi gibi okullarda sanat tarihi, çağdaş sanat eleştirisi ve teorisi, görsel kültür üzerine dersler vermektedir ve halen İstinye Üniversitesi'nde İstanbul'da öğretim üyesi olarak görev yapmaktadır. Julie Upmeyer, Sinopale'ye daha önce ikinci Bienal 2008 yılında katılmış olan çok değerli bir sanatçı dostumuz. Bir sanatçı olmanın yanı sıra aynı zamanda bir sanat inisiyatifi girişimcisidir ve Kervansaray yani Karavansaray adlı sanatçı çalışma ve üretme alanını 2010 yılında İstanbul'da hayata geçirmişti. Biz de buna bizzatihi şahit olduk. Halen Kuzey Galler'de yaşamakta olup sanatçı inisiyatiflerini geliştirmeye yönelik çalışmalarını ve sanatsal üretimlerini de burada sürdürmektedir. İlk 2008 yılında Sinop'a geldiğinde Julia Upmeyer sanatçı olarak karamsal metnini Sayın Beral Madra'nın yazmış olduğu Şeylerin Yeni Düzeni etkinliğinde bir performans yapmak üzere davet edilmişti. Sanal Şef Karadeniz adlı yapıtta Julia Upmeyer ve Ina Stokem şehir merkezinde eski tersane bölgesinde oluşturulan bir Sinop mantısı açma ve pişirme tezgahında Sinopların katılımıyla Sinop'un karşı kıyısından Karadeniz'den online olarak gönderilen ve pişirilen mantı tarifi aracılığıyla yeni mantı yapma ritüelini deneyimlettirerek bilindik olanın ötesinde için yeni bir ilişkisellik önerisinde bulunmuşlardı hatta. Sanatçı 14 yıl sonra Sinopale 8'i bir parçası olarak kuratörlüğün Rana Öztürk'ün yaptığı bu oturumda Sinopale'nin ilişkisel atlası bir başlıklı bu oturumda hatta çalışmasını yeniden ele alıyor. Ve 119.680 saat mesafeden Sinop'la Muhabbet canlı yayında tur başlıklı bir çalışmayı bize sunacak. Yeni bir öneri olarak mesafenin önemli olmadığını vurgulayan yeni bir ilişkisel kent deneyimine bizi bu akşam bizzatihi davet ediyor. Yerimi değerli dostlarım Rana Öztürk ve Upmeyer'e terk etmeden önce tüm emeği geçen ve katılanlara teşekkür ediyorum. Sinopale ekibi bu güzel programı hazırlayan ve sizlerle buluşturan görünmez kahramanlardan oluşuyor. Onlara çok özel teşekkürlerimi gönderiyorum ve değerli dostlarımız Sayın Çiğdem Girgiç yoğun enerjisiyle bize bütün anlatılanları tercüme etmek için aramızda. Ona da tabii ki özel teşekkürlerimizi gönderirken destek olan kurumlar ve kişiler web sayfamızda yer almaktadır. Onlara da şükranlarımızı iletiyoruz ve hepinize iyi bir oturum, iyi bir dinleti diliyorum, izleti diliyorum. Hepinize teşekkür ediyorum. Saygılarımla.
Teşekkürler bu güzel anlatım için. Aslında bana çok bir şey kalmadı söyleyecek. Yani genel bu programın temasına dair. Belki ufak bir şey ekleyebilirim. Yani bu proje yani Sinopale 8'e davet edildiğimde ben tabii genel olarak genel bir eğilimim var doktora tezimden de gelen işte Bienallerin küreselleşme, işte sanat tartışmaların küreselleşmesindeki rolünü inceliyordum ve relational geography kavramını işte bir şekilde ele almıştım Bienaller bağlamında. Ben de bu fırsatı işte Sinopale üzerinden e, incelemeye yani Sinopale'yi üzerinden tartışmaya açmak olarak kullanmak istedim. Yani aslında Biennaller genel olarak sanatın küreselleşmesindeki en böyle öne çıkan e, sergi formatları olduğu için hani Biennale deyince küresel bir ortamdan da bahsetmeye başlıyoruz hemen. Ama yani düşünürsek özellikle Sinop bağlamında hani hiçbir bildiğimiz anlamda bir sanat ortamı bulunmayan bir yerde bir anda bir Biennale ortaya çıkıyor ve hem yerel bağlamda hem de uluslararası sanatçılarla çok güçlü bir etkileşim yaratıyor. Ee, Bu da yani zaten yerel bağlamda yarattığı etkiyi ve işte sonradan kalıcı ilişkileri ve yarattığı komüniteyi diyeyim zaten sürekli konuşuyoruz ve hepimizi de aslında en çok etkilendiren, heyecanlandıran şey bu. E, Ve bu dizi bağlam yani Sinopale 8 bağlamında da çok fazla aslında etkinlikte ele alınıyor. Ee, Bence bu çok önemli zaten yani üzerine de hala konuşulması gerekiyor ve belki daha da çalışılması gerekiyor. Ee, Ancak yani Sinop başka yani daha geniş bir coğrafi bağlamda da nasıl bir rol almaya başladı ya da Sinopale Sinop'u nasıl konumlandırdı? Ben de biraz bununla ilgilenmek istedim. Yani bu sanatçılar pek çok sanatçı gidip geldi uzun yıllar boyunca işte 7 Bienal boyunca. Ve belki de yani ben de dahil olmak üzere hepimiz için e, çok farklı bir deneyim oldu. Sinop'u tanıdık ve onu belki hayatımızda hiç düşünmemişken bir şekilde onunla ilgili fikirler edinmeye, işte projeler yaratmaya başladık. Hani bütün bunlar e, nasıl bir bağlam yarattı? Yani Sinop dışına da taşan nasıl bir bağlam yarattı? Sinop'la nasıl ilişkiler e, kuruldu farklı yerlere de taşan. Ben aslında bunu biraz incelemeye çalıştım. Davet ettiğim sanatçılarda da sanatçıları da o dönemde yani katıldıkları yıllarda yaptıkları projelere göre seçtim. İşte bir şekilde hep bir farklı yerlerle ilişki kuran, işte kültürler arası etkileşimlerden belki bahseden ya da yaratan e, projeleri olan sanatçılarla görüşerek onları bu projeye dahil etmek istedim. Upmeyer de bu sanatçılardan biri. O dönem yaptığı Sanal Şef Karadeniz projesiyle ilgimi çekmişti. Onun üzerine konuşarak o da bir internet üzerinden etkileşim yaratan bir projeydi. İşte e, bir şekilde karşılıklı yemek tarifi verilerek online bir bağlantıyla yapılmış bir e, canlı yayında bir projeydi. Özellikle günümüzde bu da zaten şu anda bile aynı formatta işliyoruz. Hani o bağlamda da ilgi çekici olabileceğini düşündük. Ve Julie ile bunun üzerine konuşmaya başladık. Julie şu anda Wales'te yaşıyor. Aslında Sinop'tan çok daha farklı bir bağlamda. Ama bir şekilde bulunduğu bağlam üstünden Sinop'la ilişki kurmaya çalışan bir performans kurguladı. Ve şimdi onu izleyeceğiz. Belki ardından tekrar konuşmaya devam edebiliriz kendisiyle beraber.
Başlıyorum.
Tamam.
He ascends to meet a higher part of the same wall, face to face. Taller, smaller, 1 point perspective, away, away. Looking just beyond the tips of his toes, he can see a monument. Perched above our gravitational experience, leads our gaze to the sky, encircling us in an undelineated color field. Irreverent. What is meant to humble us only serves to make everything that surrounds us feel small. Behind the scenes, the labor of efficiency, built upon the efforts of other people in other times, quickly made redundant by other efforts of yet other people. Ubiquitous for a time, relics gather, pushed aside, ramshackle, rusting, or recycled. A few hold on to become vintage. Nostalgia slithers past. This place, how many shoes trod up, down, full of purpose, urgency even, tending to repetitive needs, delineated by class and capital. Tread, listing to the left, softened by souls. Walls, like skin, have layers. The smooth, rendered outer surface donned in aspirational colors. Resilient, up to a point. It's underneath we find the nerves, bones, muscle, form following function and function following form. Delineated, protected, mine distinct from yours. Shadows by day, objects collect. Some, no doubt, placed there with intent. Most, I imagine, gravitate there unconsciously. It's flat and out of the way, united in a protective layer of dust. Towards the light, an opening, an opportunity. We lost you there for a moment. My mind was elsewhere. Oh, that reminds me of something. Meanwhile, my legs ascend the stairs.
Hi, Julie.
Hello.
It was great, actually. It was great to see all the rooms of plus Botfa. Yeah.
Botfa.
Yeah. And also we could also have a glimpse of some of the exhibition pieces, I think. Yeah. So that is a place now where Julie is holding or maybe installing an exhibition. But maybe, of course, I want to talk about Plus Botfa, but maybe we can also start with your initial project that you did for Sinopale'nin 2 in 2008. And this idea of virtual chef, Lexi, and how you initiated some kind of an online exchange of recipes between some different cities around Black Sea, and how that idea emerged, especially at a time when we didn't necessarily use the internet so much for that kind of interactions and online events. It seems to be like a precursor to what we are experiencing now. So now we are all accustomed to using Zoom for this kind of online events, and maybe it started with the pandemic, but it seems like it will stay with us forever. Like we will always have these online meetings and events. So, I mean, we are just getting used to this even more. But how was it at that time? And what were you, I mean, what was your experience of doing that work?
Yeah, that project arose initially out of a simple desire to have dinner with a friend of mine. My friend groups were quite dispersed around the world at that point. I had lived in several different countries back to back. And we were just wanting to have dinner together. She was located in Poland. I was in Turkey. And we decided that we were going to cook the same thing and then eat it together. And, Skype was all the rage at that point. So we were going to have a Skype dinner. So a lot of interesting moments came out of that. One was trying to find Polish ingredients in Istanbul, which was so much fun. So it was like a treasure hunt to find the same or similar type of cheese. Anyway, my mental networks of Istanbul naturally revolve around food and ingredients and stories that people have told you about cooking and about food. So that kind of anthropological exploration of the city was a repeat feature throughout the project. Second, I discovered that you can trick yourself using the internet to have an intimate conversation and an intimate experience with another person. But you had to take it seriously in yourself. You had to set it up and treat that event within your life like a real dinner. It wasn't a secondary thing. That was the primary thing. So the following events got bigger, more complex, but the intimacy of the connection to that chef that was in any location anywhere in the world felt like they were with you in the kitchen. So it opened up the world to a dinner party. And it was just fun. It was a combination of an art event and a dinner party and being in your own home, even if you were in another place. And when you, Rana, asked me to reconsider that project in the context of this event, I was just like, well, we do that all the time now. I mean, that I wouldn't do it now. It would just be silly. There'd be no point. But I enjoyed looking at that experience and enjoying how seriously I took that and how seriously all the participants took that and what a moment of connection that was to someone in anywhere in the world.
Yeah, and then you were so hesitant about really doing this kind of a maybe online connection again in the beginning because of its very ubiquity, I guess. But somehow we still stuck to this idea of streamlining. Maybe you can also say talk a little bit about what you did with online projects that you worked on, like the ones that you were talking about with ICE, and you showed it online. Streamlining. So, do you think that is some kind of a thing to explore for you? That could be part of some artistic tool.
For sure. I think that desire to have an intimate experience with someone who's not in your place. I mean, I've always lived apart from my parents, for example. So sometimes we would meet and, I mean, you can talk for a while, but you I like doing things. So we would meet and maybe play a game, or we would go for a walk together, or decide to do something at the same time. So when the live stream became something that was within the realm of a normally involved in tech person, that didn't involve like coding or something really special, I got very excited about the idea of live streaming. Over lockdown, especially, I mean, my husband and I would attend music events. And again, the same things with the virtual chef. If you set it up like you were there, like put it on the big TV, get yourself a drink, sit down at a particular time and do that, you could have that experience. So, and you could also see the other people in the audience, even if there wasn't that interaction among the audience. You felt like you were attending it with other people, just because the simple thing that you could see their name, you were like, oh, there, David and Kathy are there. Hi. And even just typing hi, you're having that shared experience. You know that you're all listening to this event at the same time. So for the first lockdown here, I was just about to open our second exhibition. I was working with 111 different artists. We were about half installed. It's actually exactly like this point now. And suddenly lockdown, I was stuck by myself in a house with, about 50 halfway installed pieces of artwork in an exhibition. And it took a few weeks to figure out how to keep it going, but it couldn't be canceled. It couldn't be postponed. We just had to figure out how to keep going without an audience, which for artists, that's kind of the worst case scenario, that you would have an exhibition that no one showed up. But we went ahead and had the opening, which again, this sounds ubiquitous now, but we had 53 people in a Zoom room like 2 years ago. And we had performances, other places, we had breakout rooms. Like, again, like all of this happens all the time now, but it was chaotic and fun, and everyone had a good time. So I then proceeded to do tours. So I'm not a video. I didn't want to edit things. I didn't have time. So I really got into the idea of a live stream as a shared unit of time that was layered over other units of time, which could be shared, and had that same level of intimacy of the virtual chef, of playing games with my parents. And I would go through the house just as I did with you guys, literally, like the lowest common tech denominator. It was something possible. It was something intimate. And I just did it. The first time it was awful. It's really difficult to keep your train of thought and focus on keeping your frame. But the second time it was better. Third time it was better. And the final tour, I was just like, boom, boom, boom, boom, boom. Like, and it worked. And that managed to keep all the artists in the exhibition conceptually together. We had a flow. We had, audience members from all over the world. And then those are recorded as the exhibition. And that then flowed into my own artwork. I did a 48-hour, I did 2 kind of epically long live streams back to back in the same section. So I started playing with the idea of these long format live streams, that it wasn't a meeting that you would come into like this, that everyone's focused on it, but it was, again, a unit of time that could enter other people's time streams. So one was a 48-hour melting block of ice. Very simple. For 48 hours, there was a camera framed on my melting sculpture. So people just had it on, going about their day, doing work. It was in a town just on the other side of the strait called Carnarvon. So you had all of those Carnarvon seagulls, some boat sounds, some street sounds that became a layer in a whole variety of different people's lives. They just lived with that live stream. They would pop in, pop out. We had maybe 20 at one moment and down to 3 at 4 a.m. But it was something that existed in a virtual pocket of visuals and sound that people all over the world could kind of intersect. And that just became a really interesting space to work in as well for that piece. And then it just becomes handy over lockdown to be able to activate a space that's accessible. And I don't know what's happening in Turkey, but a lot of people haven't really conceptually left lockdown. Like people kind of forgot why they used to go outside and just kind of are happy focusing on themselves in their space. So I have a couple other ideas of kind of these digital slices that can exist in its own way creatively outside of like a phone call or documentation.
I think in Turkey we are pretty comfortable with leaving the lockdown, especially in Istanbul, even though I think our socialization is slightly changed. I know people who don't really go out much, but still the Istanbul streets would be really busy with people now. But I think what I wanted to say that, I mean, in the end, when we connect online through this live stream events, let's say, there's this sense of shared time in a way, just that we do now. I mean, maybe we have 2 hours difference, but we are just sharing the moments. But there's this sense of maybe lack of attachment to some place. So even my background is now this white poster we have for Sinopale. So, I mean, I don't relate to you from my actual space in a way, but your way of dealing with this project was to show your own space, literally, along with some images that you also took from Sinop, was a way of also responding to what I asked for. I mean, I was actually trying to ask you to relate back to what you did in Sinop, and you were really considering it's almost impossible. But we still talked about live streaming from Sinop itself. So at least there would be actual connection with Sinop, but then we moved on to other ideas. But maybe you can say something about where you are and the significance of why you wanted to show us that space, maybe, especially in the context of Sinopale'nin now.
Yeah. As soon as I became engaged with this project, I just sat down and wrote anything that I possibly remembered from that trip, which was a very random scattering of people and places and experience. And it just seemed really far away. And I didn't feel a connection to those memories. There was too many things in between. So then after I wrote down what I directly remembered, I just said, okay, well, I took pictures. So I went back and just out of curiosity more than anything, if I could have found something to touch upon, if there was something in my pictures. And that was just kind of fun. Then I was like, oh yeah. I mean, it's always fun to look at pictures. But that didn't bring me any closer to feeling like I had a connection to Sinop in a meaningful way. And then I went back to your text about relational atlas and these connections, and it seemed like such a tiny thread that me, one person, just happened to be there for so many days, and now I'm completely somewhere else. And then it just seemed tenuous at best, conceptually. But when I went through my archive again, I saw them more compositionally instead of trying to jog memories. And the materials that appeared in my archive images became just like this global ubiquitousness of concrete, ivy growing. It's the same materials, and they had decayed in the photos that I had taken in a very similar way that time has had an effect on the house that we're in we haven't started renovating, but in the process of engaging. And then I just felt I had to be more aggressive artistically than I was looking to be, and say, okay, image, slap it on the wall, literally. And I enjoy these loops I enjoy dimensional loops. So translating things from 3 dimensions to 2 dimensions, back to 3 dimensions to 4 dimensions. And these dimensional loops appear a lot in my physical artwork. So for this one, I was trying to see how many digital, physical loops I could create in a single experience, which brought me back to my original intentions of virtual chef and being experimental with technology, but not in a purely digital sense. So I took some images that were attractive to me from Sinop, compositionally or because of a material connection. I have a little Pico projector, and I went around in the beginning it felt aggressive, but then it because it's light, because it's a projection, it felt less forceful over time as I was producing the work. So I would have the projector in one hand, my camera in the other hand, and I would create these images with my 2 hands. So it's a very physical process, sometimes in really awkward sort of positions, like hold the camera there and the projector there. So I enjoyed the physicality of it, especially since it became a digital image again in the end. And then to create a live stream that would connect the place with the images, with the house, with this unit of time that we're sharing. So in the end, after trying 5 different paths, I'm pleased. And then I have these photos that have been performed, but in the end, it's the text and the photos. That's also a performance. So I like also that it doesn't exist in only one form. And technically it doesn't really exist at all because it's light in space, which only existed for 5, 10, 1 minute.
Yeah. It also says something about the nature of photography in general. Because in the end, it's just some past light that's just kept on some kind of a surface. So it's not the actual anyway.
Yeah.
So that is just maybe another layer of that elusiveness of photography. But I think still what you do is a way of maybe immersing a Sinop experience into your own architectural space. I mean, it's also a lived space, so there are lots of different other layers there. So that was also something interesting for me. I mean, it's maybe we should also talk a little bit about Plus Botfa, because maybe not the audience didn't necessarily understand what it is or where it is, because it's some place that Julie actually lives. It's a manor house, we call it, right? And it's where she lives, but it's also some sort of an artist studio building, as I understand, and an exhibition space. So it has also different layers of history itself. And through Julie, somehow Sinop's history also became part of it through this performance. So would you want to say something about it?
Sure. I had been living in Istanbul for 11 years, and my husband and I and my, at that point, 1-year-old baby we were ready for our next life. And my husband's from North Wales, and we decided rather quickly to start finding a house here somewhere with the thought of having it be a lifetime project. We weren't going to move again. Like, this was it. I mean, best case scenario. So to narrow it down, I used to have a summer house on Burgazada. So it's a small island off of the coast of Istanbul for non-Turkish friends. So I lived there every summer for about 6 years. So I had already done some thinking about the idea of islandness and remoteness and connectivity. And it seemed like a good idea to live on an island again. We had to narrow it down somehow. So we started looking on Anglesey, which is an island off the coast of North Wales, much bigger than Burgas. And this house kind of fell in our laps in a way. I just wanted a big studio. That was my only requirement. But when we became entangled in the house here, all of our life aspirations as far as artist residencies and studios and workshops and multidisciplinary actions formed themselves around this house. So we're not living inside of it yet. We haven't gotten the planning permissions to do the renovations. So it's a shell. We're living on site in a small caravan. And we're like squatting in the house. I have my studio in the house. My husband has his office. The girls have various playrooms. And about once a year, I had started organizing these massive exhibitions. So the first one, we had 69 creatives and artists. The second one, which became the lockdown experience, we ended up with 111. And then this one, we're at, 77, depending on how you count. But these exhibitions always have a tagline. The first two was the possibilities of a house. So they're explorative projects from a wide range of creative people. The first one, we had a skateboarding group that shot a music video while skateboarding all the way through the house. We have a duo that has collected different pigments and has made pigments and an entire Plasbodfa pigment collection based on their findings in the grounds. So it's been a way of placemaking for me. Through these exhibitions, I've had 200 different people show me what is special about the house, about the island, about Wales, about the UK, what's going on underground, what farming is like, and bringing these different people together. They've also learned from each other
through their experiences. Yeah, so we will kind of hope to plan to live inside at some point, I hope. Work in progress.
Yeah, it looks like an exciting space anyway. So I hope you can. And it looks like an exciting space to do projects as well. So
it has an interesting history, and this exhibition is particularly looking at, well, I titled it Bodfa Continuum, the possibilities of time. So that fits in a lot to some of your thinking about the relational atlas as well. This house isn't listed. It's not significant in a historical register sense, but because it has continuous history from 1920 all the way through 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and people remember different parts of the house. There's something particular about this house's story that is engaging. It was a steakhouse in the 70s. It was a residential care home in the 80s. It was the headquarters to a tapestry kit company. So there's lots of aspects of this that are physically layered in the space. So you can see the fireplaces from like the Art Deco inspired fireplaces from the 30s or 40s layered on top of this, these arches from the 70s steakhouse. And then there's a whole layer of 1980s care home aesthetics as well. And they all sit together in this warping time travel experience, just being in the space. So to add layers of ideas of art onto it, it becomes very, very immersive and so much about a specific place that it widens up into the possibilities of space, of time, of things much beyond the specific history of this house in this place. That was complicated to translate. I'm sorry.
Maybe. I'm sure you will do amazing stuff there, and it feels like that. And I would be curious to know more. And in a way, it was really nice to see how Sinop, images from Sinop and layers of history from Sinop were also overlaid on the layers of history in Plus Bodfa. So maybe just by you being there, you also create this kind of a relational thing, which I'm trying to explore maybe. But yeah, I mean, I like this idea of, in a way, connecting places through human activities. This is actually your term. And yeah, this is what maybe all these art activities and biennials somehow try to do. So maybe I should just also ask the audience. We don't have maybe so many people online in the Zoom room, but maybe there are also people watching us on YouTube. So if they have also questions, they can also contribute, or they can maybe comment. So we are happy to also have you as part of the conversation.
Seems there's one question in the chat. I can't read it quickly enough to respond to it with any efficiency. Sorry.
So this performance tour is like a psychogeographical walk, and it moves us through different stories. And it made me think of, rethink lived time and past concepts of the past of a place. And the event in 2008 was somehow about the continuity of information coming from the past, but now it is, I think, your statement is related to the concepts that I'm talking about in your place, that is also full of stories. But now Zoom has helped us to access this as a fast tool. So in this context, what is your opinion about the concept of time? I hope my translation was fine, but yeah.
Well, I was kind of remembering where I was trying to read it kind of too, but I don't remember as many words as I'd like to think. Yeah, I think time can really be manipulated a lot depending on context. And in my readings about dimensions, like that, there's one book, it's very dense, that someone has explained the dimensions 1 to 10, like what is the 4th dimension, what is the 5th dimension, and then you kind of lose his train of thought beyond the 5th. I mean, I read it, but it's hard to internalize. So I mean, sometimes I think of time as the 4th dimension, but sometimes 5th, because time is something that you can engage with in the same way that you can engage with an object. You can make it stretch out. You can do certain activities, like particularly addictive activities, I think makes your brain register time differently. So if I'm doing a repetitive physical activity, time just speeds up. It just goes. And, you know, there's something exceptionally addictive about telephones, and not just the apps or if there's games that you play, but the possibility of connectivity. And I think that can expand and restrict time at the same time. But being in this house, this is a disjointed answer. But being in this house, I feel connected to a timeline for the first time. I was quite nomadic for a while, and I found myself dipping into other people's timelines. But after engaging the history of this house, like I've admitted that I have had an effect on this house. I'm not distinct from it. So I have inserted myself, aggressively or not, into the timeline of this house, which I never felt in any other place before. And part of that, something that you said before, is human activity. But I think observing other activity, I mean, like the ice melting, for example, like that's time doing its own thing. Like I didn't have a part in that. So I think there's something interesting when you're able to engage time in the same way that you would engage other materials. So I've come to, I'm still putting my thoughts together about that. I could like answer that in 4 different directions, but the pieces that I've done that has time as a distinctive material within that work, in which I'm inciting action. Like I'm getting something started and then letting time be a significant factor in the production of that work. That was like 3 half answers. Sorry.
I mean, in the end, it's a difficult question anyway. I mean, about time, and it's just, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. I think the point here also highlighted Zoom, because Zoom is a way of maybe sharing a time. I mean, we wouldn't otherwise be sharing all those stories in the same way, by maybe some sort of witnessing an experience of all the stories that space actually has inside in it. I mean, difficult layers of time, which Zoom maybe somehow helps us access. But yeah,
it does. I mean, and thank you to yourself and team because I hadn't tried to figure out my entire like Turkish existence yet. Like moving to a new country and having small children and, you know, being involved in a house in a new place and then a pandemic was like completely engrossing. And we would like tell anecdotes about, oh yeah, in Turkey, oh yeah. But I hadn't, like, this is the first step in me figuring out what that part of my life was about and what was going on there and how I was thinking about things and how I was thinking about art and myself. Because I kind of became an adult in Istanbul. I mean, it was a significant part of my life. So this was like the first step in me trying to understand that time. So thank you for that path.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I want to add something as well. I find the performance very enjoyable because it held in several contradictory aspects in it. One, at some point, I thought wherever she's gazing in her studio, she's thinking of Sinop. And then I thought at another moment, but these are all so conceptual pictures that it could be anywhere. It doesn't necessarily relating to Sinop. And it was like the movements were very robotic, but nothing was random. So there was this constant going back and forth between feelings and ideas, and that kept me really intrigued within the whole show. And I think that's your playfulness with what you do, actually, because like you explained in the conversation, none of these were your issues. You were at some point got focused in your own actions and how you could get a product out of those actions. And that makes it very nice, very enjoyable. Thanks for sharing with us.
My pleasure. Thank you for the invitation. It was really good.
Yeah, I also agree. I mean, you could have chosen to just show us some slides from Sinop, the photographs that you took in Sinop, and talk about them, the kind of experiences you had, but actually you really tried to engage them with them within your current state and life, and the performance made it even more intriguing in that sense.
I'm trying to reform my art practice as well at the moment. So if I have an invitation to make art, I'm interested in making art, not just talking. So it's a good challenge. Previously, my practice was kind of completely based on having lots and lots and lots of hours to get engaged in a process and make things that was very much based on that labor and the product of my labor. And I don't have time. I don't have that time, and I won't for a while. So I'm in the process of figuring out how to make art, not without thought, not without planning, but without that like 100 hours of labor in it. I'm almost there.
Sounds good. And any other comments or questions? Maybe Melih wants to say something.
Ben zaten çok zor bir soru sordum. Zaman meselesiyle ilgili olarak. Tabii bunu sormamın nedeni şu. Çünkü o dönemde yine bir online bir çalışma, o geleneksel şeyde ne derler, bir çalışmanın içerisinde daha yeni diyelim, daha ilerici bir şey olarak bir Skype görüşmesi vardı suyun öteki tarafıyla. Ki bugün o suyun öteki tarafıyla şu anda erişimimiz kesik vaziyette. Bu da mesela bugünün o zamanı getirmiş olduğu şartlardan bir tanesi. Çünkü orada bir savaş var Odessa'da. Çünkü o küçük yerde aslında Julie başka bir şeyin de altını çizmiş oldu. Bir dönem oradan gelen insanlar o şehirde yerleşmişlerdi ve ilk çıktıkları yer tersane bölgesiydi ve işte o etkinliği, performansı gerçekleştirdiğimiz yerdi ve hepimiz orada bize karşı sahilden gönderilen reçeteyle yeni bir mantı yapıyorduk. Yani hamur yapıyorduk. Ama biz de yıllar içerisinde evirdiğimiz, işte o kültür içerisinde oranın yaşanmışlığıyla, yani zaman bunun içerisine giriyor. Yeniden harç etmiş olduğumuz başka bir mantı formunu karşı tarafa gönderiyorduk. Ama bugün onu yapabilme durumuna ne yazık ki zamanın getirmiş olduğu koşullardan dolayı erişemiyoruz. Çünkü orada savaş var. O nedenle bence o dönemdeki performans şimdi bugünden baktığımda çok değerli bir çalışma idi. Bugün yine Julie'nin şu anda bulunmuş olduğu yerde yine hikayelerin içerisinde bize bir anlatısallıkta bulunması da bir müddet sonra başka bir dönemde yine böyle bakacağımız bir durumun altını çiziyor gibi geliyor. Ben açıkçası böyle bir çalışmayı birlikte gerçekleştirdiğiniz için hepinize teşekkür ediyorum. Çok hoşuma gitti.
Biz de teşekkür ederiz. Yani ben de özellikle böyle bir şekilde eski bir iş üzerine konuşmak yerine gerçekten o işin de uyandırdığı fikirleri yeniden düşünüp yeni bir şey yaratma fikri beni de daha çok heyecanlandırdı açıkçası. Yani performansta ben sonucu da keyifle izledim açıkçası. O yüzden güzel bir iş oldu benim açımdan. Yani güzel bir kolaborasyon oldu. Sorry, I also switched to Turkish. I don't know if you are listening the translation, Julie, but I was just saying.
Yeah, I heard. Thanks.
Yeah, I am also thankful for responding to my invitation and taking it seriously and really rethinking how you can really engage with Sinop from now, maybe within the difficulties of our time with the pandemic and also all the other difficulties that Melih just mentioned. So how can we, because Sinop was about creating these connections, but can they all survive, or can they last long, or what can we do about those connections now? Is another question, maybe.
Yeah. My third attempt at coming up with a piece was something that I had a desire to do something in Sinop, but feeling so disconnected, distance, and not having been there in such a long time, all of my actions seemed, well, I'm just really conscious of art, being an art missionary, and like thinking you're doing a great thing by giving this amazing creation that you've made to the people. And it just didn't feel right. There wasn't something that, what I'm just thinking about the people that I communicated with in the was it Limon Cafe, and like what would they want? What could they possibly need from me? Would they even remember what happened? And like that awkwardness was not a source of like inspiration, and trying to think like, oh, if someone walking through that charsha were to come across this object, like I don't want it to be confusing or intimidating or aggressive. And all of those ideas just like fell flat. So I think it is really difficult to think of that double layer of removal, and the relational aspect of that removal. Because even when I was in Sinop, my relation was to Istanbul. So any comparisons that I was making at the time were like to Istanbul. So then, like, to Istanbul, to Wales, back to Sinop, it was just such a thin line. But so it came down to this very small experience, which was my experience. So the thing that I did feel good about was celebrating or remembering or thinking about ways that Sinop enriched, like the generosity of my experience in Sinop went on to enrich my life in other ways, and then creating something that was inspired by that, and not trying to like give something without being asked to give. And I was asked to give in the context of this exhibition. And then I, in one version of it in my head, then put that on to like give to Sinop, which is, you can't do that successfully. And then you go back to being a missionary again. And I don't want to go down that path. So that's what brought me back to what the invitation was, which was to participate in a biennale that was online as an artist. So once I kind of focused on what the ask was, it brought me back to be able to create the piece I did.
Yeah. Yeah, and thank you for that, actually, again, and thanks for being part of this project too. I don't know if there's any other comments or maybe question to Julie or to me, maybe. Maybe we can.
Efendim, evet, sanırım ben her ikinize de teşekkür ediyorum ve Sinopale'de tekrar bulunduğunuz için, tekrar bizimle işbirliği yaptığınız için bir kez daha teşekkürlerimi size sunuyorum. Tüm Sinopale ekibi adına, şu anda görünmeyen kahramanlar arka planda birçok kişi bu etkinliğin, bu görmüş olduğunuz canlı etkinliğin gerçekleştirilmesi için çaba gösteriyor, ama biz onları sadece birer buton olarak görüyoruz. Bu da işte zamanın getirmiş olduğu garipliklerden bir tanesi. Ve bu çabalarımız önümüzdeki zamanlar içerisinde tekrar devam edecek. Mümkün olduğunca bunu yapmaya çalışıyoruz. Sinopale'nin İlişkisel Atlası bir tek bu akşam yok. Başka akşamlarda olacak. Bu başlangıçtı. 1 numaraydı. Upmeyer'le birlikte olduk. Rana Öztürk'ün kuratörlüğünü yapmış olduğu bu proje için lütfen ve diğer projelerimiz için sinopale8.org altından girerek her hafta ne olduğunu görebilirsiniz. Oradaki linke de tıklayarak, taze linke tıklayarak hemen etkinliğimizin içerisine girebilirsiniz. Hepinizi saygıyla kucaklıyorum.
Evet, ben de teşekkür ediyorum tekrar bu Sinopale'ye davet ettiğiniz için. Julie'ye de teşekkürler ve bir sonraki etkinliği de bu vesileyle duyurmak istiyorum. Haftaya olacak ikinci etkinliğimiz Raluca Popa ile. O da küçük bir performans ve konuşma yapacak. Ona da bütün izleyicileri bekleriz.